Thank you for coming. I'm Gideon Ademkel from Winrock International Ethiopian Country Office, and I'm here with my wonderful supervisor, Jennifer. We'll be trying to host this, facilitate actually. We are going to facilitate this discussion session on the possibility of unlocking the private sector resource towards WASH activities. So in this regard, we are just thinking of having a kind of brainstorming and a discussion session where we will get your inputs and feedbacks, and at the same time your thoughts, your experiences, what you have seen so far on the contribution of the private sector, because as we all know that the SDG 6 or the overall SDG goal is coming to an end, and at this time we are looking for a lot of resources in terms of financial, which is really affecting the developing world. Because of the limited resource, so we need to have, or we need to see on how to accelerate the resource allocation and also finding of resource from the private sector investors, so that we can at least contribute to the best we can, and we provide sustainable service for citizens of every country. So with this in mind, we have kind of 4 sessions. Actually, as I told you, we are here to learn, so the first 30 minutes will be allocated for you, so that we will have a group discussion by which every member or every participant of this session will discuss about your experiences on the private sector investment, and then you will reflect on the second half of the 15 minutes on the experiences and the knowledge that you have in that regard. Then we will share you what we have done so far on the private sector investment, especially on the solarization of diesel-driven community water pumping systems. We will have a very brief presentation showing how our business model looks like, and also what kinds of results we have really achieved or we are trying to achieve in the coming times and also in the past. Then we will have a reflection session, and I think that will be the end of our program. So with this, I kindly request you to make a group of 6 people. The main target of actually the group is to know each other, to share your private sector investment, so that you will do the group, and then you will have the discussion with this kind of guiding questions from our side about the experience of the private sector investment in your area of knowledge. It doesn't have to be only the water, or it doesn't have to be only the sanitation, but in general, it's good to see how the environment looks like in terms of the private sector investment. And also, we want to hear if you have seen more sustainable business models for the private sector investment, so that we can discuss in small groups for 15 minutes, and then we will have a reflection session on that for the next 15 minutes. So with this, I kindly want you to have a group of 6 people in each group, then to allocate or to assign one group leader that will be a presenter for the discussion. Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, don't be shy, you can turn the chairs around, and the people online, if you can type your thoughts into the chat, we'll share them as well. Thank you.
Chris again. Winrock International. Good to meet So we look at. Do you want to join our group? That'd be great.
Introduce ourselves?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. I'm Megan Lindmark. I'm with Megan. I'm Tessa Brown. Marissa Rowley, the water stuff.
Bill Jar with Bill Water.
I'm with water. I'm happy to have zero experience.
So you want to start with our solar water?
Can we call you Tim for short? Michael.
That's great. Maybe that's a question we could ask.
So I guess, we have hand pumps was the start, right? So hand pumps we try to qualify, twice a year, and collect money each time they came to visit. And we did a tried sort of, and make a little tiny bit of money, but it probably cost more money to get the money we get from the villages. In all honesty, we probably spent $2 for every $1 we collected, but we spent all that time issues going out. We started to implement solar tank systems, which are obviously a much larger scale for interior areas for places where they have money to monitor and systems that do help you here. Make sure I get it absolutely right. But when we set up the system, we would hire managers of the system. But then for the tax standard, we have to the contractors to look at the tax standard for the amount of water spent. We've had a much better ability to collect the tax standard. Yeah, which is estimated well beyond all the ones we ever collected. So we started to collect enough that it almost replaced the operations and maintenance fund. So we just made the salaries we need teams to go out. So we're getting close to break even, not on the input, but on the we're not far enough into it to know sure because it's bigger costs to operate for you that come here. 8 and 10 to 12. You have to save up for it because that's when the good part is pretty expensive stuff. That's the plan.
I don't have any experience.
Very similar model, except we are collecting from the communities themselves, from access to water, and then they're paying their own maintenance. Water systems, and all the water storage system, so it's a raised water tower, kiosks. Very similar, just we're not collecting access when it comes to the property of the once we finish building the water storage. So village state savings and loan program. We see
Now you're excited to operate stuff and you're trying to collect
exactly. So we are constructing with
information I hear from
funds from donors, and then
technologies we're using.
the water. We're there to support them, and we monitor monetary levy. We can't go back and carry some bigger, but little reports. That's part of the process is what we're monitoring. So we want to go back and make sure if there's a tank issue or solid power issue, we have to support that process. But smaller places, we train mechanics to be able to manage those themselves. So yeah, this is a newer fund. So we provide a baseline of suggested money that is needed to maintain the system, and they have to monitor that for us. They have to handle that themselves.
I think one example that I've just been in discussions with, not personal experience, but in discussions with Rental as a private pump company, they are putting forward a strategy where they can perform energy audits for a rural, I would say, in the very urban, larger scale systems, provide energy audits and show how solarization can really save municipality money. And then Redwood will provide upfront the capital to buy the systems, install them with a structured payment process that will be over a period of time, where they're taking basically the energy saving cost over the first however 5 or 10 years, however long, to repay Renfos for that. So I think that I have no real understanding of how successful they are in this model. I know they're really in the business development side of it right now. But I think that's a really good example. Private investment, there's no, this is not a philanthropic operation. And a model that could
Are they working with NGOs to do it, or is it doing it directly?
I think that they're working more with like cities.
This is very interesting to me because
I think that's part of it.
Yeah.
Scale.
I have to do something water.
I don't understand personally, but for my understanding as an engineer, everybody else is solar scale. Separation technology does not make sense.
I mean, that's what we want. Having these conversations of saying what is appropriate.
Which is a question, but how much money are we talking about now?
Those are the interesting things that I'm trying to it helps you as an advisor, expert.
Sometimes just having access to line of credit or some sort of very
I've seen
but also for that thing, so that you're not, larger corporate situation, time for someone will have these fine. No, I'm serious, instead of over a year, 200, 300 person, little toys.
To like go over what you're saying, I think the big question, like how do you get those accessible is like how do teachers get those private investors to say that this is a stable investment? That's really intervention. But that is kind of the shift that needs to happen.
But that is sanitation, because the micro loans. There's a model for how to try water. Pretty it's at scale.
started on the project from stones, and they are looking at how do you provide the funding to motivate the banks, like basically you're like, acting like you're at that first hit, there's an issue, and then so what's interesting about the setup is that, yeah, the change, like the water service providers, which are large, like they're not small, but like, you have like doing something, like actually something, and, but it goes, everything goes to an escrow account first, and so the loan, the bank gets their money first, and then it goes to the service provider, so you basically get rid of that kind of position of like, well, you owe money, you paid, and so that's, I mean, they're starting to, but that's part of the character, while you're underwater, I don't know if it's really private investment, I'm not sure if you, it is like private, and that's similar with CRS, a similar thing in software for watershed. Basically, the whole thing is backed by this government, but she's providing money initially to buy back those bonds, and then it falls south. It's like win-win for Chase, but and then also it's backed by others also have like this financial penalty if they don't hit certain goals, and so it's very strong motivation by the government.
Hello, everybody. Just letting you know, you have 3 minutes left. If you could select what you want to report back to the big group, that would be great.
I don't think it's
It's not, I don't see what would private investment is too far.
This model works especially well for urban areas.
I know.
And it might be one sort of private investment that isn't, that could be, users, right? That aren't, really partnering, especially if it's small.
Private investment works after our networks.
Yeah.
That's the way private investment, they're not gambling, they're not vertical gambling. They want to assure things, just like Chase, and they want to know. And I'm like, no, they are, I mean, they wouldn't be in business, like Chase would not be in business, they're like, I gotta go hard, I mean, you gotta have a solid business on back. The latrine thing, they started the latrine was back the loans had Royal, people were back the loan, and they got 7% repayment. And then all of a sudden, once they got 7% repayment, banks are like, oh, now that I see the 70% return rate, well, so obviously they didn't have to charge out.
You have 1 minute left.
Money out of their success. They're not there to like experiment with, I could potentially be a small amount of money.
Then,
private sector and also
I guess maybe one example, intentionally related, so you have cancer, that's important with chlorination for water treatment. We could have like gone do something on-site interaction at natural facilities, using an electric chlorination producer, and following our work that and have gone and purchased 400 There's not, a quick turnaround in pipeline. And there was a lot going on that we weren't aware of, like I think the decision to make that purchase by healthcare. We were surprised by that.
Okay, everybody.
But there were private.
Can we wrap up the small groups? And maybe, can I ask whoever might be ready to share a good example from your group, and we can chart the few examples up front here. Anyone brave enough to go first?
Your name's on the board.
Morning, everyone. My name is Will Gard from the Water Center, and we had several discussion points. I won't say we had a ton of experience with private sector investment among our group, but one project that I am aware of that we are we do a lot of technical assistance and de-risking investments in our local water center. And part of that is looking at a model that's in Kenya right now, where they're trying to, has to be a certain level of scale for water service providers. Like, it can't be a small village, there has to be enough revenue in order to generate enough income to be able to provide back, pay back like a 50% loan. And so, one foundation is gonna take the, kind of like that first loss, or I forget the exact term, but the idea, and then get government funding to provide a loan to about 40 water service providers that are, looking to solarize on a 3-year payback term, with the idea that the cost savings from electricity and then also availability of water will generate more revenue than the cost of installing that. And so, but there's a lot of challenges. There's private sector engagement, there's also private consulting, as far as like the design goes and procurement, and so there's different pieces to that that are all sort of still being worked out.
Thank you. You can pass the microphone.
Next group.
Great.
Hi, my name is Patrick. I'm with COVA. In our group, in this back corner here, we actually talked broadly about, I think, 3 different type of private sector funding methods, perhaps. I think the predominant one was public-private partnerships with utilities and how utilities can create welcoming environments for the private sector. In addition to that, there was a handful of experience working with corporations and how corporations can use volumetric water benefit accounting or water quality benefit accounting, which is kind of a higher level privatization of the water sector. And then in addition to that, at COVA, we function as a social enterprise. So offering services that are paid for, or setting up supply chains for chlorine tablets, for example, but doing so at a subsidized rate or with micro margins.
Thank you. Who's next?
Good morning. My name is Pascal Olinga, and I work with Wells of Life in Uganda. And our group, we came up with a few examples both in Uganda and Ethiopia. From Uganda, we have transitioned into a point where now the government is trying to encourage the private sector to invest in maintenance and operation of water sources through a legal framework called, we call it our operation and maintenance framework that is currently being rolled out. So in this framework, we have a sort of private and public partnership where private people are encouraged to invest in maintenance of existing water sources for profit purposes, but then of course government is there to regulate it. We have also seen examples of individuals come up with technologies that are helping to first of all collect water user fees. These are prepaid metering systems that are developed by private individuals, and they're able to make a percentage of the collections for maintenance of that system. My colleagues from Ethiopia will give a bit of more details about what is in Ethiopia. Thank you.
Thank you so much. My name is Penelope Honis. In our group, the experience actually, the little experience, not so much experience in the private sectors. relation to even public-private sector. So there was a system that we have started in WRI called Payment for Ecosystem Services, where the downstream people where irrigation is sustainable when they pay for upstream. So there is a contribution from the downstream irrigators to make payment for upstream so that they restore the upstream where there is to make sustainable water system in downstream. Thank you.
Did you say WRI?
Yes, the World Resources
And
Institute.
that payment for ecosystem services is irrigation based? For irrigation?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
There is a system called Water Fund, but that's not yet started. So the started point that for us is a payment for ecosystem service. Actually, not so much, but initial. It's a very initial stage.
Early stage, okay, thank you. Anyone from this group? No.
Okay, it's mine. So in my group, all of us are come to learn from others. Most of us, we don't have this experience of private-public collaboration. We share that there are some differences based on the country and the local context, especially my organization work is in the rural context, and it's not easy to have private companies to come and invest there. But we want to learn from the rest of you.
Right. Let's see, one more person? Who hasn't spoken yet? Or even if you just have a question that you want to queue up. I'll take one more. Okay, we'll just go ahead and launch right into our presentation then. Thank you. Thanks everyone for breaking into groups. There we go. Okay, so I'm just going to introduce Winrock very briefly. Can everybody in the room hear me okay? Okay, great. And I think people on Zoom are doing okay. Winrock's an international nonprofit organization based in the US. We were founded in 1985 through the merger of a couple of Rockefeller family organizations. We have 3 main global program areas. My team is under environment and climate. We also have agriculture, resilience and water team, and human rights, education and empowerment. And our team called Clean Energy and Circular Economy, we focus on off-grid energy access, including clean energy finance and productive uses of renewable energy. And I just want to shout out to our whole team is online virtually. Kia, Emily, Aiden, Vikash, and Lorraine, thank you guys for joining. It feels great to have everybody here. So we're going to talk to you today about a project that we are implementing in Ethiopia, funded by the Conrad and Hilton Foundation. It's called Solarizing Community Water Supply. And our goal is to demonstrate a scalable commercial business model for solarizing diesel community water supply pumps in rural off-grid areas. So I want to first start by explaining a little bit about the policy context and the existing conditions. The government of Ethiopia does have a goal of leveraging more private investment into the water sector, particularly into rural water systems. And the current conditions in rural areas, many thousands of towns, are that the cost of water is relatively high because people are paying for diesel-powered generators to pump water. So there are many existing pipe water systems. Some of them have only public taps, some of them have some household connections. And people are paying 2 to 5 birr per jerry can at the public tap. And that money is used to cover diesel fuel and operation and maintenance, including salaries of operators, repair, replacement of system components. Increasing costs of diesel fuel and shortages of diesel fuel are resulting in most of these systems being down, I would say most of the time. Sometimes people are able to turn on the pump once or twice a week when they can find diesel fuel. Sometimes we arrive at a community and find the pump has been off for 2 months or a year. people are paying up to 20 birr per jerry can to transport water from the nearest grid pump or the nearest town that has a working pump. And as a result, many households are having to resort to using untreated river water. And at the moment, the only option that communities have for solarization is a donation model. Oftentimes, communities are putting 10% down, but they're needing to wait for a government or donor to cover the remaining 90% of the solar pump costs. I think we all know, and I was educated a lot last year at this conference about the burden on women and girls carrying water. There was an amazing study by Emory University in Atlanta about how many calories women burn carrying water every day in many countries. And I think this WHO UNICEF Joint Management Program study is somewhat sobering that over the course of 15 years, between 2008 and 2023, not much changed in terms of the responsibility of women for carrying water. So this is an urgent problem. So we set out after a 2019 feasibility study that was funded by the Rockefeller Brothers Fund. It showed that there could be a very relatively short payback time for these communities if they simply would spend 3 years paying back the cost of a solar pump with what they had been spending on diesel fuel. So our business model is that the community maintains the same tariff they're currently charging, a minimum of about 2 birr per jerry can. And that tariff, water tariff, is sufficient to cover a monthly installment payment to a private solar developer to pay off a 3-year lease, and to set aside funds for repair and replacement of other system components, and also pay the salaries of tap operators and other water system operators. So we developed a 3-way contract between the local water committee, in some cases water utility in the rural town, the private solar developer, in country most of them are based in Addis, and the district government. And so in our model, the solar developer owns and operates the solar pump during the 3-year lease period, but the water committee in the town continues to operate the balance of the system, the reservoir, the pipes, the taps, and collect water revenues. So a key aspect for private developers to join this process is their conception of the market size and the opportunities for them, for this market to be launched and to grow independently of NGO support. We know there are thousands of communities that are already paying to purchase diesel fuel who could actually benefit from this model and be ready to purchase a solar pump immediately. I think this bell curve is sort of helpful in envisioning what could happen compared to what's currently happening. So on the leading edge of the curve, we estimate there are many, many communities that are ready to purchase their own solar pump right now. So the criteria, kind of the sweet spot that we've identified through 3 years of work on this project, is that it helps if the total dynamic head is less than 220 meters for the economic feasibility of the solar pump. If the well is very deep, sometimes solar is not feasible. The water demand should be above about 50 meters cubed per day, and most of these towns have a 50 meter cube or larger reservoir already. The tariff needs to be at least 2 birr per jerry can, although with increasing currency devaluation and shortage of diesel, we're seeing costs go up to 5 or higher birr per jerry can. So it's getting easier to find communities that have that tariff already. It helps if they can collect the 10% down payment for the pump from the community. And the rest of the water system needs to be in good condition. So our model does not contemplate major structural repairs, if the reservoir is broken or anything like that. So in the second quadrant, we assume there are probably many more hundreds or thousands of communities that could be ready for this model if they could make minor repairs to their system. On the back end of the curve, of course, there will be communities for various reasons that always probably will just need a donated pump. But if we don't offer this lease-to-own model, we're leaving the front half of the curve with no options when, in fact, they could solarize very quickly. I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Gideon.
Yeah, thank you, Jane. Actually, based on this model, what we have seen critical is the project implementation process should be defined properly, because it has a lot of risks from both the private sector and at the same time from the community side. So based on that, we developed this process. It's a long process to get into solarizing a single community. So what we'll do is we will have an agreement with government in Ethiopia. So we will collect first the list of data or the list of sites from the government side, and then we'll pass through a two-phase feasibility assessment process, the pre-feasibility assessment and the detailed feasibility assessment to identify more feasible sites in terms of both the technical and the socio-economic aspect, especially on the functionality of the other systems, the availability of strong water management condition, and at the same time to understand or to be sure about the technical capacity of the distribution system, including the reservoirs, and also the other distribution lines. And also we go for collecting or compiling community expression of interest, which include a kind of support from the government side, and as well as petitions from the communities will be collected before getting into the tendering process. Then we will have an open tender, and at the same time we will support or facilitate community contracting process because at the end of the day the client or the paying party will be the community. So what we do is, after having an open tender of selecting qualified companies, we will do the overall decision together with the community by giving the decision powers for the communities. And there are two major elements. The first one is the financial element. As Jane showed, the community is expected to pay the first 10% ahead of the solarization. And the second one is the sustainability in terms of water management system, including equity and inclusion. So based on that, we have a continuous diversity and inclusion activity where communities come together and make their water management system empowered so that the water system properly managed. Then we also work on capacitating the water committee, because at the end of the day they are the one who are going to sign the contract and also being obliged to collect the installment payment for the private company. So after assuring this, the solar pump will be installed, and finally the revenue monitoring activity will be managed by Winrock. So with this process, we have achievements that we want to show. The first one is we have conducted more than 50 plus hydrogeology assessment in 50 plus communities. We have got interest from 12 solar developers in the country, Ethiopian companies who are willing to provide this lease-to-own model for the rural communities. At the same time, 9 communities have shown interest and passed through that process and signed their lease-to-own contract. One of the main issues that will be a good motivation for all of us is, with this process, we have managed to mobilize around 300,000 USD from the private companies living in Ethiopia, which will be a good contribution for this project. We have 2 communities or 2 solar PV systems, solar pumps that are serving for 1 year in one of our project region, and also we have 6 communities on second region. The first 2 have operated for more than a year without any default on the installment payment, and at the same time on the 10%. And as a result of that, the communities have also got a lot of advantages. And also these 6 communities are currently getting water through the private sector investment. This is a geographical map where we are in Ethiopia. As you have seen, these are the 2 biggest regions in the country. So in Amara region, we have 2 communities. We're getting the service for more than a year and a half, and then we have these 6 communities in Oromia, and 2 more are coming. As this time, 2 communities are under the installation phase. In this project, we are also do an in-depth research by having household survey and more than 300 households per community. So we have the baseline and the inline data for the 2 communities in Amara region. As you have seen, there are 2 critical elements. The first one is in using tap water. Before we start the assessment or the project implementation, it used to be about 60% in one of our communities and about 50% second one. But after the installation, it has showed a lot of increment to about 97 and 90% as we have seen. And in this community specifically, even the household connection has shown a critical increment, which is around 440 households were connected in a single year. Similarly, we have also seen a kind of increment or a kind of advancement in terms of minimizing the waiting hours or the water fetching out in both communities. It is a significant difference that we have seen from the communities through this baseline and endline assessment. In this project, there are learnings. I think this is the most important part to discuss or to reflect for this session. We have seen that the communities are ready to pay for the solarization. And at the same time, we have also seen that the solar developers are ready to provide the lease to own business model, or they are ready to provide solar for the communities. And the other element in terms of access to finance is we have seen also banks are ready to avail loan for the private companies so that the system can scale up fast. The other one is the commitment from the government side. As you may think, the main critical element is the functionality of the system, which is directly dependent on the other balance of system, including the distribution system, reservoirs, and the capacity of collecting tariffs from the water management committees. In that regard, we have seen a strong commitment from the government side in assuring that. So that is a guarantee that the private companies can have from the government side. Whereas still we have also seen that there should be an access to finance for the private companies, because as you have seen in our 3 years pilot phase, we only achieved 10 systems. So with that rate, it's difficult to reach the hundreds and thousands of communities that are in need. So the need for access to finance is critical. That's what we have learned so far. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Gary. I just wanted to add, our slides didn't cover the fact that we also provide a small results-based grant incentive to the solar developers on the back end. So after the pump is installed, we provide a one-time grant payment to them. We don't ask what they're using it for. It's not to subsidize the solar pump, but it's to cover some of the extra risks that the companies face going into this new market. So they may have to hire different marketing people, or they may have other costs to determine how to set up, like monitoring for the lease, 3-year lease within their office. So we do provide a de-risking grant. And we've decided that rather than pegging the incentive to the cost of the pump, which can result in cost inflation, we peg the incentive to the hydraulic duty of the pump, which is sort of an objective measure of the power of the pump. In our first round of solar developer tenders, the ratio of dollars per meters to the fourth was like over 2, so it was a very high incentive. And it's gotten down to about 70 cents per meter to the fourth. So we've seen that as we're lowering the incentive to the solar companies, they're sticking around and they're still participating, and they're taking on more of the risk as this business model advances. I think that is it. So we'll just open the floor to any questions on everything we just presented. We can go back to any of the slides if you have questions just for a few minutes, and then we'll have a larger discussion. You want to add anything? Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I have many questions, but I'll start with like 2 main ones. So the first one is, who pays for design? So who pays for the design of the system? And then kind of follows, like, what does quality assurance, quality control look like? And is there any warranty after the 3 years, right? If something goes down after 3 years, what's the plan for that?
Yeah, good question. So the detailed feasibility study that we do yields the parameters that a solar company needs to do an accurate design. So the total dynamic head, the daily water demand, friction losses, all of those things. So we provide those parameters in the tender, and then that's part of the way that we vet the solar companies, is by determining whether they can come up with an accurate design. We have a technology expert who reviews those along with Gideon. So they're paying, they're doing the design, but we're reviewing it in terms of quality control. In terms of the warranty, so solar panels are typically under warranty for 20 to 25 years. They're very robust. The price of solar has come down 90% in the last 5 years, so it's getting more and more affordable. The submersible pumps that are used with the solar panels are not really any different from the pump you would use with a diesel generator. So those are similar lifetime to a regular submersible pump. I think we've seen a lot of Chinese pumps coming into the market in Ethiopia, and they're significantly less expensive, but potentially have a lower lifetime than some of the European submersible pumps. Yeah, solar pumps. Did you want to add anything?
Yeah, maybe actually on second part.
You can use this.
Yeah. Regarding the warranty after 3 years, as Jen showed us on the presentation, the first 3 years, the responsibility will be on the private company. So what we do is like we will enable the communities to collect the money for replacing the pumps, which is the most sensitive part of the system, and expected to be changed within 5 to 6 years. And we believe that the panels will stay for the 25 years. So after 5 years, that means 2 years after the private company goes on, we believe that the communities will have enough money to buy that pump. So that is the insuring mechanism that we have. And at the same time, what we do is like we are using third parties insurance, so that like all the equipment that are installed will be insured by third party insurance providing companies. That is what we have.
Go ahead.
I might have missed this, but, and maybe it's community specific, but the distribution system, are these like community, like stand pumps, or are you going to each plot? And is there a meter on each plot? And my corollary question to that was, do you have any evidence about whether people are using any of this additional water or for irrigation of small plots?
Yeah, that's a good question. So to your first question, in Ethiopia there are thousands of piped water systems that are existing in rural areas. And we are working in an average size community of about 10,000 people that already has a diesel generator that's pumping the water. So we're trying to solarize those. Those diesel generators are getting old. They require more and more maintenance over time. Did that answer your first question?
Are they metered? When you go to a family plot, is it metered? Or
most of the systems have very few household connections. So in a community of 10,000, maybe there will be 100 to 300 household connections. Yeah. And in terms of, we do not have data on whether people are using them for water for garden plants. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just curious again about this question of scale. It seems like 10,000 average community, that's like a small town maybe. And is there, the scale is, for a private developer, do they have a certain community size? And then also for them, are they looking at, okay, and I would like to have, the market should be, 100 available in this geographic area where I might work? And do you guys have a sense of the scale that way too?
Good question.
Yeah, actually, we're on the piloting phase, and we're doing currently a feasibility assessment in terms of the technical and the socio-economic aspect for limited communities. So our next plan is not letting the private companies only do the solarization, but we are also thinking to engage them into doing the feasibility assessment by themselves. So in that case, like once they get out through our project for the investment, it will be a good opportunity to use our sites as a referral market and do the other negotiation by themselves. That is actually the next step that we are thinking in this business model. And at the same time, there is a national level study that show high level data actually that can be used for pre-selecting the communities, but the detailed feasibility assessment should be handed over in a few years, should be handed over to the private companies. That's what we're doing.
I would also add, I think in this first pilot phase doing 10, and then in January we're hoping to start our next phase doing 30 or more. We started out with quite small solar developers who were willing to take this risk, almost like a corporate social responsibility type project. Now I think we're moving into a phase where we're going to try to attract some of the very large solar and pump companies, And they've told us that they are looking for a larger market. So they'd like to see that they can scale up to, 100 pumps a year or something like that. So that's exactly right, yeah. Yes, in the back.
Yeah, so I saw in your presentation you mentioned the issue of non-revenue water was tapped to the government. And I was just wondering, I know that if you have a lot of water that is being wasted somewhere, the efficiency of those solar pumps is probably going to be lower, which means you are probably going to get older faster, and the community needs to be paying a lot more to cover that. How is that working practically? How is the government helping you with managing the
Yeah. Yeah, this is the most tricky one, especially in terms of non-revenue water, because as you said, it's not about losing only the water, but it also highly rely on collecting tariffs properly. So the role of the government mostly lies on assuring the sustainability of the distribution system, where the rural communities doesn't have the technical capacity to maintain their distribution system and keep it safe in a very sustainable way, so that the water can be easily distributed. That part is given for the government, whereas in terms of capacitating them towards efficient money collection mechanisms, we provide a kind of capacity development activities in terms of financial management. That's what we do. And the second part is currently also we are planning to use a kind of small and micro enterprises that can support the water management system or the water management committees in the rural side. But in terms of number-wise, there is a huge amount of non-revenue water that's being recorded, and also we have seen a very good improvement in some of the communities by doing a kind of campaign, at least to assure and understand the current scenario, the main reason for the non-revenue, and also trying to have a strategic solution towards that. So one of the main findings that we have is it's not the most challenging problem or the most persisting problem within the communities is the capacity to collect the tariff, because it has a kind of hidden element that you have to identify. So for that, we highly involve the rural communities by coordinating the rural communities. We highly involve them. We create ownership, because when they are paying for the 10%, they are collecting the money house to house from each household. So the ownership will be created, and the motivation will also increase by providing reliable water. That's what we have seen. On the technical aspect, as you said, we are thinking of engaging small and micro enterprises for the operation and the maintenance of the system. But I can tell still the problem is there. Yeah.
I'll just add that, because it's such an important question about non-revenue water. Most of these systems were designed 5 to 15 years ago, and so even if there's water that's being used but not paid for, or if there's leaks in the system, the single borehole in this town where the population has grown is probably still not even providing enough water. So even if we closed all those losses, I think all the water would be used. So it's not like we're greatly oversizing the solar pump and saddling the community with an expensive pump. I think all the water that pump could be used. Because these towns don't have thousands of household connections, typically the mechanical water losses are easier to detect and fix, and we've already seen many communities taking steps to do that. And that brings me to my final point about this, which is the chicken and egg game. So people will pay more and more reliably for better service. So we feel like the solar pump kind of upgrades, jumps up the level of service. People can see that it's working every day. It doesn't have any, running costs, lots of moving parts to take care of, and so you're more likely to have success with a community campaign to start getting the revenue up once the water is on. So we feel like the solar pump's kind of a motivating piece in that way. Yeah.
I had a question sort of related to the design question. I know you're in the pilot phase, but I was curious if, from your experience, or if you're planning to look at all these communities and have these assessments and sort of put together a standardized solar equipment package, which would maybe reduce a lot of burden on the solar developers, if you could say, we just want this equipment, and if you think that this is something you'll have data for.
That's a good question.
Yeah, this one is also the other element actually. When we are thinking of the solar pumping, the scenario is a bit different than the conventional pump because the solar pumping is really site specific. Even like in a similar total dynamic kit, you can have different pumps with similar capacities for different services. So for now, we are not thinking over it. What we are doing is like, since the private company is going to do the negotiation with the communities, they are expected to design the systems. If we are buying, like for instance, the solar pumps in bulk, maybe a kind of clustering categories or categorizing pumps makes sense. But in this case, like there will be a separate contract between the private companies and the communities, and at the same time, the systems that need to be provided should fit the specific interest of the communities. So we are not into it actually.
We have an online question. Understand that insurance companies guarantee investments for the community project. Is this done through a special arrangement, or do the companies pay a premium for the insurance?
Actually, what we have done is we do a negotiation with the insurance companies. They are willing to provide the insurance for predefined elements. They are not providing for the whole system, like they are providing insurance coverage for some part of it. So what we do is we add that premium cost on the contractual agreement with the private companies and the communities. That means the communities are paying the premium.
Great. And we have one more question online, which is how can water users be encouraged to pay for water services when communities have long been accustomed to receiving free water from sources established by various NGOs?
Actually, even if that is a condition or the situation where the other part of the water system is constructed either by the government or by donors, the communities are expected to operate it sustainably. That means they have already started paying for water, which was our very first assumption, and our selection is based on the amount that they are paying. So we only focus on communities that are paying 2 to 3 birr per 20 liter jerrycan, which will be between 100 and 150 birr per meter cube. So those are our target communities, and those are the one we put on the green part of our project intervention. So we are not encouraging or we are not pushing communities that are drinking water for free. Yeah.
Go ahead.
From your presentation, it sounds like you have quite a robust site assessment where you're looking at individual site design. From your learnings, would you say that you're going to develop or you have a broader enabling environment assessment? Because you've mentioned a lot of things around banks' willingness to contribute, around the availability of solar private companies and their service areas and government support and all these things. If you were to say go to another country or a completely different region in Ethiopia, are those types of assessments things that you're going to be developing, or would you say there are go, no-go kind of situations where the enabling environment would not support such a project?
Yeah, that's a really good question.
You can take it.
I think we do believe that this model is broadly applicable across the Sahel, where people are in arid areas are paying the price of diesel for pumping water. As you've noted, we've touched on portions of the ecosystem that are critical to just this, like switching out diesel for solar. And we're trying, even as Gideon's talking about our efforts to build capacity of the Water Committee, we're really trying to keep the boundaries around our scope of work to really just switching out that solar pump and then allowing the other actors to fall in place and do their jobs, taking care of the water system, making sure that water utility is professional and staffed properly. And so far, I feel like that's been a strong model for us, just to really not have scope creep outside of that. I don't know if that makes sense or answers your question. So we're focusing on those aspects of the model that are critical to make this lease-to-own work, and then we're looking to other actors to fall in line supporting. You've had your hand up for a little while.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. I know that you are focusing on transitioning from diesel operated to solar. Yeah, it's good to wait on what is already available. but I'm thinking about scale, in the spirit of doing it right the first time. And with the possibility that, or a situation where there is a stream of funding in the way you're operating, how do you rope in new developers who are trying to set up a system and maybe tuning them that they should be first time think about solar? And with the little resources, they can match with the lease just to fund the solar part of it, and then they focus on the other aspects. Do you have that kind of system where you're encouraging new developers? And if so, a new developer is probably already in the business, their break-even period may be different from those already in the business. What would be their repay period if they are considered in this system?
That's a good question. So you're talking about whether this lease-to-own model could be feasible or could help with new construction of new water systems, if I understood. Yeah, I think we've thought about that a lot too. Do you want to, should I go first or you?
Actually, in the normal trend or in the normal water development exercise, either by the government or by the donors, what we know is like all of them are at this stage at least using a holistic approach where they are doing the water system in a complete way, like having the borehole, sometimes separated from the other constructions, but the distribution system and the energy source are mostly go together. So in that case, what we are trying to think is like if it can be in a kind of clustered approach where some private companies work on the water systems and the others work on the energy aspect, the lease-to-own model will be an easy fit because different studies that were done on the PPP arrangement for the water system doesn't show like a feasibility of the PPPs and the holistic approach. Rather, they are showing us like PPP is more feasible if we can consider a clustered approach where some part of it can be taken as an EPC with a different arrangement and some components of the water system can be easily go for lease to own. So what we are doing from our side is like we are showing the importance of solarization is being understood by the governments, the policymakers, so they are putting as a requirement, as a basic requirement to do solarization at the very beginning of the construction. That will be a good solution. In that case, the EPC or the leasing model can be applied, but the main challenge is happening on those systems that are looking for rehabilitation. That means that are already constructed by those are diesel-driven systems. So our current focus is mainly on the existing systems, but we still provide policy input for the government to consider solarization as a basic element of the strategies. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. In your system, do you utilize any kind of remote sensing like satellite-based so you can watch for trends in usage and help plan for maintenance? And if not, would you find that helpful?
As of now, we don't have that arrangement, but in the future, what we're insisting for or looking for is a full service delivery model where the private sector will do the solarization and also operate the system at the same time. In that case, the remote monitoring system will play a key role. But at this time, our main concern is the financial element in it. We don't want to incur more cost on the rural communities that are suffering, still paying for $2 per jerrycan. So we are not into pushing for the remote monitoring systems, but in the near future, where the full service delivery model will play the key role, in that case, we encourage having remote monitoring systems. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think I'm wondering if we should end a little early. We'll stay as long as people want, but just to give people the chance to leave, maybe we'll go 5 more minutes. And could I just see a show of hands who has a remaining question, and we'll just sort of number you. 1, anyone else? 2, okay. 2 more questions, and then we'll just end early. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I saw that you guys have different sort of management models, like water utility, water committee.
do you have differences in acceptance between those that are managed by a water committee versus those that are utility managed?
Yeah, actually, we don't have that difference because the main buyer is the community. But in terms of assuring the sustainability of the business model, there is a big difference because the water management, especially the wash costs, are organized by volunteers. They don't have the technical capacity to manage the system. Whereas utilities are established by professionals, the government establishes utilities by hiring professionals. In that case, the management system is more strong as compared to the wash costs. So in terms of interest, we cannot say that there is a big difference, but in terms of management system, there is a difference.
I think the government has a plan to convert most water committees to water utilities. It's actually a legal entity which has paid staff. And I think in our next phase, we're going to be seeking to work mainly with utilities because of that, stronger governance. And I also wanted to just circle back in the chat. People are having a great discussion about a couple of things. When we're looking at this curve again, so in the 50 plus communities that we've done detailed assessments of, about 50% of those are in this front quadrant. So that's pretty hopeful for us. So, you know, if we think there might be 6,000 plus existing rural piped water systems currently using diesel, if 3,000 of them are in the front half of this curve, that's pretty important for a quick scale up. There's a whole generation of people who could have reliable drinking water without waiting for the grid or other donations. Just wanted to thank you to my colleague Bikash for putting that out in the chat. Final question?
I wanted to come back to the enabling environment question. Just if you wanted to replicate this experience in another country, I'm just coming back to this idea of is there something uniquely present in the Ethiopian environment that's making it work that you would look for as kind of your baseline? I'm wondering if how much of this success is kind of predicated on the strong rural interest the Ethiopian government has in water supply, you know, with the commitment to rural water in Ethiopia. Does that make it uniquely feasible in this context? I recognize what you're saying, that, you know, that's sort of outside of your scope doing that kind of analysis, but you must have a gut feel about this.
Can I start and then you can? So, you know, our experience going into Ethiopia, Winrock hadn't worked for many years there. We had a very light footprint for the first 2 years with only Gideon leading things and home office support. And I think sometimes, you know, it's a fairly simple model. People have heard of lease to own. Sometimes when you go into a complex environment with a new idea, it can take hold. And I feel like that really happened for us. And I think, you know, over the 3 years we sort of knew instinctively that it could work, but I think these criteria here are really what we've distilled. So any country that is pumping with diesel, that sort of has systems that fit into this criteria or would be constructing new systems, I think seems to me that it could work. And it took, we had a very light footprint for what we were doing for the first 2.5 years. So I don't know if you want to contradict me or
Actually, thank you for coming up for this enabling environment. Actually, one of the main or the key elements for such types of innovative ideas, especially when you come to the private companies, go on the country's regulations and the strategies. So when we first out for, even in Ethiopia before 3 years, and tried to pitch for this business model, everyone was surprised because the law is there. It always talk about the private sector involvement in every aspect, but there is no any specific element that support say types of innovative ideas. So in the first place, or in the first time when we went out, it was a kind of difficulty. So what we did was like, we tried to explore what are the possible areas that are already strategized by the government. And then we try to tackle the challenge based on those specific entry points that will not directly allow you, but they are not prohibited, or they are not prohibit you not to work on that. So based on that, after having the pilots, then the government thinking started changing, and now I can say that there is an enabling environment here in Ethiopia, to work on the lease to own model. And I think that approach can be adopted for other countries, because everywhere we go, the private sector involvement is key in terms of paper, but in terms of strategy, we don't have such clear guidance in any areas.
Also, we got very different responses from different regional governments. Some were more and have been more willing to work with us than others, and I think in our next phase, we're going to be working in 4 regional states, and sort of first come, first serve. Like if the government is ready and can help us with sites, we'll go forward. So that also helped our ability to sort of offer what we were doing and respond to the most responsive local governments. I think we'll wrap up here, but we'll be around for the next 15 minutes. Please feel free to stay and talk with us. Thanks so much for attending. Have a great conference, and I just want to thank my colleague Gideon for a wonderful collaboration.
Between that and the bid process, you are going to be getting floor developers. Or maybe not one side, but right, well, I mean, in terms of solar equipment, right, you're looking at panels, batteries, at least not too much, not even batteries, so then, instead of asking a solar developer to do a design project for you, so you say, okay, we're looking for a solar developer that can provide,
I think the best answer is to look at our, it's your laptop, to look at our spreadsheet, or is it just
Thank you so much for the session. We were both late, so that's why we're both here asking this, and maybe you discussed it already, but I would love to hear a little bit more about insurance scheme and how that works, or how that is working. I'm a research and development engineer, so I am involved in a lot of the technical conversations we have with manufacturers. Not currently. We work primarily in health facilities, and we're constantly doing projects involving solarification of kindergarten and health facilities. So we're having some of the same conversations. That's separate. Like there was also a bank loaning money to a solar company, and then there was insurance.
Let me show you.
insurance company will insure the solar course.
So yeah, again, should be somewhere in Europe.
Say that again, so
Like if something breaks on the pump, then the insurance company covers it.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, the solar company has to pay a monthly thing, or the community pays?
Hi.
Whereas part of it matters.
My question is what I would like to know.
I'm just looking up a quick presentation for her. If you want
Through their fees,
Yeah,
and the water utilities, if they're collecting their fees,
No,
and doing that,
it's actually
that
really-
payment and all of that.
I don't know if you also want to just see this. I'm going to show her our.
one to two quarters per Jerry can, the size of water, community water use and all of that. Were those predetermined or were they determined based on your experience with the system?
If you look at the temporary, so
Yeah.
there's a kilowatt peak size of the panels, which is in every case. And there's a kilowatt size of the
Right, they're existing systems. They're diesel, mostly diesel systems.
Four of them had a 15 kilowatt
So
pump.
the communities you're working with already have established
This one had a 14 kilowatt.
So behavior change wasn't a huge part because they were already
Pretty much
doing
has to
it.
be customized to everything. And it's because of
the behavior change.
the amount of power that's needed. And so you can adjust that very finely to make sure you're not sending two different signals. You want to minimize the number of panels, and so the solar developer has to set
And going forward, it sounds like your preference is to work
So
with
this means
existing
different
utilities versus working with existing ones.
Yeah, you can see the nothing solid. One of our communities bought a proposed pump, which may last 12 years as well as like a Chinese pump.
Familiar with that, right?
So they paid
Wealth of
quite a bit
communities
more.
that you work with. So really more communities may not be able to cover even their tariff requirements or their,
It's impressive to see that they're actually paying that much. Where we're from in Uganda is going to be easy to raise the prices right now.
Are there communities that are paying a lot of
because you already
Most of our communities use pumps. We work with loads of over 1,000 pumps. And now we're into a phase where we're trying to authorize some solar pumps. And so when we had this, when we
Utility has a subsidy.
so we don't really have a lot of diesel but I wonder, so do you work out
Because that makes me wonder if, like, let's say company A, they work in these two places, and one place is pretty profitable, and the other place isn't. Like, there's that, ever been a case like that, where it's like the same company or the same sheriff, two water utilities, and one is sort of like
I think that is a challenge
social
from the
responsibility
to
said the corporate responsibility, and one is
but I
actually
think that,
profitable.
you know,
Is that
our
a
research
research
for like the cost of solar has come down so much, and the burden on it is so terrible that it really should just be addressed. There's no reason.
So it balances for that, like their checkbook balances. Like,
All right.
The thing is, most of the communities are serving now, the moment they get it, they're bringing water closer to them. They're willing to pay, they're willing to
Right.
the biggest investment was we need to try to run out to we are still using primarily solar, actually, primarily solar. Although some situations, technical designers have been encouraging us to have a component of grid connection.
Oh, I guess I meant like less, low payment
But I
percentage, or
think
like
this is
smaller communities who just can't, if there's not enough of them, even if, let's say, 100% of them are paying their tariff, there would still be a less profitable.
if you guys have plans for expanding, Uganda would have
We'll talk to those founders.
yes.
Yeah, well, maybe I'll circle back to you this week. Thanks so much. Hi, my name is Tess. I'm with the I love what you guys do. Thank you. Are you guys using your We have a paper that we, right now our main audience is the World Bank and the International Program in Ethiopia, because we're trying to get them to actually state in their phase 3 strategy and policy that they want to install more diesel systems. And we just got here from the president, meeting with them this week, and we finally sort of gotten through all the gatekeepers to because when we did, they asked us for a life cycle cost analysis versus we did, and we put it all into a paper. So short answer is yes, we'll publish that, and I'm hoping that they did ask us to speak to help us solarize the 200 unit system that they just built in the last 5 years under that program. So that's a good sign.
Yeah, the interest is there, yeah. I was curious, like, hearing about this model, and like, obviously, like, this pilot phase, it's like showing really good success. What is your position on, like, capacity development and like handing this off locally, and like, is this something that you want to see exist in the government? Is going to remain as like,
Such a good
your role
question.
to stay there doing vetting these people,
We don't.
designs?
We want to exit completely.
Yeah.
And it's such a good question. I think my boss who was online, we talk about it a lot. Like, what is our exit strategy? Because the government is not really in anywhere in the world the right place to serve as a neutral this type of accountable and just be the one to assess the systems. The private companies probably a better bet, or some sort of like entity that the government might create.
Like a third
Yeah, like a watchdog, kind of just to make sure that it stays accountable in the market.
Because it's both the accountable work and the quality of the design is so important, right? We just hear so many projects that are failing, but it's often due to the fact that they weren't.
And that's the biggest risk to the private developers. If they're told, oh, it's, these are the parameters, they design the pump, and then they get there and find out that so we're taking away all that risk by what we're doing. I do think, like Davis and Charlotte, one of the biggest companies in Kenya, if they had an in-house team that would be going out and doing, they could probably do a reliable job of this. It takes away the competition. Like right now, we're having at least 2 developers present to every community, so we can pick which one they want. But yeah, I think if all those things are answered, we wouldn't be doing this. We're trying to launch this market. It's really difficult.
Yeah, trying to find what is that path to that capacity locally. Obviously, like you said, if it existed already, this wouldn't be a problem. But no, it's really interesting to know who are the actors and what skills do they need to be able to do these.
The pieces of assessments, I think for now we're hoping to partner with some NGOs in the country to do that specialize in running those systems. Like there's a couple of NGOs that have been trying these models in private entities running the water system for the water utilities. So Water for Good is one of them, and we're in talks with them not to fund each other, but just to try to do like a 1-2 punch, like we come in and solarizing, and they try to use their private water system operation model. So that could be what's happening in the next couple of years in that second phase.
Well, and that's one of the questions I didn't ask, but one I thought was interesting, because your note on how usage has increased a lot from alternative sources of tap.
let's see.
And we were seeing like in some other countries where that's not happening, and it's causing the system to fail because like the market isn't developing locally. People are still relying on alternative water sources. And so I was interested to see that really, maybe that's one of the keys to the success of it in Ethiopia, is that it's like culturally there is that uptake is really happening.
Where did you know?
Madagascar, I've noticed it recently.
So they're still just using river water?
River water, there's the hand pumps that exist,
Yeah.
and you know, those alternative sources, and so the funding doesn't isn't sustainable because people are just elsewhere. So, but there's a level of service that, like, I think you are right, that does increase and people want
It's like
to
a
buy
chicken
it.
and egg.
Yeah.
In general, you have to increase the reliability of service before people are going to pay.
See you, hi.
But we haven't run into that.
And then that's really
Like
great.
people are just
That
still
is
using
really
river water.
Awesome, glad to see a big contingent here.
He's my boss's boss.
Even though the solar pumps aren't. We haven't run into that.
Yeah.
I could see if there were a lot of hand pumps around and the water was pretty clean.
Yeah.
People just.
And also there's
Okay, yeah.
nearby to the source.
Yeah.
And
Okay,
sometimes
I saw
like
that.
the water may get overflow from the spring source.
Yeah.
We get an overflow from the collection chamber, so
People
in that
just.
case what they do is
Okay.
people
Yeah, I
prefer to
think I
go
had-
there and take it for
There's
free.
a couple times where there's
But I think
like, there's a
with
couple
the
times
scale
where
of this,
there's
the communities are targeting as
I
well.
know. And so we're trying to figure out how we like.
That
It's kind of funny how that
that
lines up.
isn't reliant on, but still your numbers are saying like if 90% or more converted to taps, then that's a massive target.
Yeah, and there was a really good presentation last year. I can't remember who did the study, but they showed like, it's almost like an economic supply and demand curve, but they showed the percentage of households.
I saw that last year. It's that last year.
Yeah, everybody would start to lose a flexion zone to 30%. And I think the solar just seems to be this
Catalyst, yeah.
I mean, even that one town that we're getting was saying they put in almost 400 connections last year, showing inactive, or we had to stop working there because they had
Okay, so you should connect with the
So
water grid too.
that's really amazing.
I was just talking to Adrian. Okay, yeah, Adrian is.
Well, it was really nice to meet you
you.
guys and keep up the great work.
Global Water Center does online
Yeah, so that's
training
the-
for water system operators.
Yeah, we do a lot of capacity development, specifically
Yeah.
for solar,
You're gonna be here all week?
operations and maintenance, in
Starting
line,
tomorrow, okay.
online, in
Okay.
person. Yeah,
I'll be here also.
to build up
We'll
those,
get it out,
this
yeah.
professionalize the water
I
center.
keep wondering
Somebody
how
else
we
who's
get
also
more
just
visit
here for.
because
Well, we'd love to talk.
Very good to meet you.
About
It's really good to meet you. Yeah.
what it looks like to scale what you guys are doing.
awesome. Well, the good thing is like you're doing your session first. We have the rest of the day.
There you go, just relaxing.
We'll see you again.
Yeah.
Okay, bye.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was really excited to see where it is right now. I'm trying to meet somebody else now, but I'd love to catch up more on it later.
Yeah, we have
Because
to.
this is, and she's the one we want to connect with too.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that happened. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Greg Mixler. Thank you for the presentation
Yeah,
here.
nice to meet you.
I was, so Michael and I are both part of Design Outreach, and so I don't know if you're familiar with what we do.
He was telling me right before the session.
We need a little dog and pony show with it, but you can,
No,
Sure.
well,
Yeah.
this is, so you already shared about this, but I was gonna talk about remote sensing.
Oh, yeah.
So, what, like Michael had mentioned about remote sensing, one of the things that we've done really for about, how many years? It's been about 8 or 9 years, we've been working on remote sensing mostly for hand pumps. And then about 2 years ago, have teamed up with different partners on what we're calling universal low-cost sensor. So in other words, this is for hand pumps and both solar power pumps or electric pumps. And it's something that like we're seeing a ton of interest in. Organizations who are doing PRMs or are just interested in sharing with donors or carbon credits. I mean, there's all sorts of motivations people have to know.
So
like,
where does the sensor go or how exactly?
So on a solarized system.
Here's the app.
Okay.
Come up here and so if I look at our longest running pump,
I'm just gonna disconnect us from Zoom so people have like continue to listen.
So you're talking about the light pump in here.
yeah, so it's just an example, so, but yeah.
So on a-
So this pump was used 10 hours and 27 minutes yesterday.